Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja ki jai. So today I have, or yesterday, and I want to apologize for yesterday. It was a very, very confused morning. I won't go into the story, but so I received homework from Samart and Shritan and Sananda. And it looks like that's it. Okay, so I'm going to read Sananda. Let's see what he says. Question. Read Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.25 to 30 and write an essay about the difference between materially motivated Vedic spiritual activities and pure devotional service. And references Bhagavad Gita 18.5, 18.6, Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4, and look up for other references. Answer. Okay, so this is Sananda's homework. It says, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15. Vedaishta sarvaham eva vedya. The real purpose of studying the Vedas is to approach the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Unfortunately, unintelligent people, materially motivated people, bewildered by the grandeur of Vedic yagyas, want to see gorgeous sacrifices performed. Materially motivated people want Vedic mantras chanted and huge amounts of money spent for such ceremonies. The ceremonies were meant for persons interested in Vedic rituals for elevation to heavenly planets. Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam. Whereas the Sankirtana movement was meant for pure devotees interested in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Very good. Especially in this age of Kali, Sankirtana alone is sufficient. There is no need of any other performances. A pure devotee is one whose intelligence is clear. He is truly thoughtful because he engages in the service of the Lord, not as a matter of show, but with love, with his mind, words, and body. The definition of a pure devotee as given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu can be summarized thus. His service is favorable and is always in relation to Krishna. In order to keep the purity of such Krishna-conscious activities, one must be freed from all material desires and philosophical speculation. Any desire except for the service of the Lord is called material desire, and philosophical speculation refers to the sort of speculation that ultimately arrives at a conclusion of voidism or impersonalism. Non-devotees may make a show of religion, but it is not very effective because although they ostentatiously attend a temple or church, they are thinking of something else. Such persons are neglecting their religious duty and are punishable by Yamaraj. But a devotee who commits sinful acts, which he may do unwillingly or accidentally because of his former habits, is excused. That is the value of the Sankirtan movement. As per Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.27 and 28, Yamaraja, the king of Yama Loka, has said to his servants that do not approach the pure devotees of Lord Krishna because they are protected by the Supreme Lord. But if you do approach them, then you will be killed by Lord Krishna's chakra. Therefore I warn you all to not approach these great devotees and only approach the rascals who do not chant the glories of Lord Krishna. Devotees are not liable to punishment by Yamaraj. But persons who have no information of Krishna consciousness cannot be protected by their material life of so-called family enjoyment. As per Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.29, human society is meant to follow strictly the Varnashram Dharma, which divides society into 4 social divisions: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, and 4 spiritual divisions: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. Varnashram Dharma easily brings one nearer to Lord Vishnu, who is the only true objective in human society. Unfortunately, however, people do not know that their self-interest is to return home back to Godhead, or to approach Lord Vishnu. Durasaya ye bahir artamaninaha. Every human being is expected to perform duties meant for approaching Lord Vishnu. Yamaraja advises the Yamadutas to bring him those persons who have forgotten their duties toward Vishnu, Akrita Vishnu Kirtyan, one who does not chant the holy name of Vishnu or Krishna, who does not bow down to the deity of Vishnu, and who does not remember the lotus feet of Vishnu is punishable by Yamaraja. In summary, all Avaishnavas, or non-devotee persons, unconcerned with Lord Vishnu, are punishable by Yamaraj. Conclusion. Even though one is a very learned scholar of the Vedic Shastras, he may be completely unaware of the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his name, fame, qualities, and so forth, whereas one who is not a great scholar can understand the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he somehow or other becomes a pure devotee of the Lord by engaging in devotional service. Your humble servant, Sananda Paparu. Okay, very good. Sananda, very, very good. Okay, so next we'll hear from Shritan. And homework is read Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 3, verse 25 to 30, and write an essay about the difference between materially motivated Vedic spiritual activities and pure devotional service. References to look at: Bhagavad Gita 18.5, 18.6, Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4, and, if possible, look up other references. Okay, so Shritan writes, the point which the Vedas lead to is Krishna, but people overlook this and accept the flowery language of the Vedas. You have to add of the Vedas, flowery language of the Vedas, as the complete knowledge given. People will perform sacrifices given by the Vedas, do it for material benefit, which is sense gratification. In the purport of Bhagavad Gita 18.6, it is said that all sacrifices meant for material advancement in life should be given up. End of quote. A pure devotee only accepts work which will benefit him in Krishna consciousness and rejects anything unfavorable. This is confirmed in the purport where Prabhupada says, a devotee of the Lord should accept any kind of work, sacrifice, or charity which will help him to the discharge of devotional service to the Lord. The materialistic people harboring after sense gratification cannot understand the transcendental value of performing devotional service or chanting. The sense gratification these type of people crave is temporary. Spiritual activities give unlimited bliss. The rituals given by the Vedas are given to purify oneself, but chanting the holy name is better than this. In verse 31, and also 31, or in other words, 6.3.31 and 6.3.32, we see that chanting can uproot the greatest sins, cleanses the heart, and cleanses the heart. It is confirmed here that this cannot be done by the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Ritualistic ceremonies hold no such benefits, and their given benefits are temporary. Chanting the holy name is the only method of liberation in Kali Yuga. After reaching the spiritual world, one does not return. Okay. After reaching the spiritual world, one does not return, which is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 8.15. Materially motivated activities will not liberate you, but will purify you to some extent. They are meant to elevate you to the mode of goodness. Spiritual activities, however, are situated in the transcendental mode of goodness and are not done for oneself. Okay, so here we have very good explanation also by Sritan. Basically, the only motive one should have is to please Krishna by one's service. Or, as it's said in the Bhagavad Gita, Yajnarta karmano nyatra lokamam karma kandana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangasha jayate. So, this is a very nice verse in Bhagavad Gita, and it says that all activities should be performed as a sacrifice for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. Any other activity will bind one to the bondage of material karma. So, is this possible? Yes. In other words, one does not have to change what they're doing. They simply have to change the purpose of what they're doing. So if the purpose is sense gratification, then working in this company or that company, investing in this stock or that stock, educating your kids in this school or that school, going to Costco and buying necessary supplies for the house and for food and this and that. Well, okay. But if the ultimate goal is sense gratification, then all that is condemning. All that is generating karma that keeps a person entangled in the cycle of birth and death. But one can do the same thing, but if the objective is to please Krishna, then you have to do it in such a way that Krishna will be pleased. And how do you learn how to do that? You learn from the example of great devotees in the past, like Janaka Maharaj, or Nanda Maharaj, or Bhisma Pitamaha, or great women like Draupadi. They always depended on the intelligence of more advanced devotees. And in that way, they avoid making a lot of mistakes. So, if one works without material desires and replaces the material desires with the desire to please Krishna, if one works favorably and avoids bad association, and if one offers the result with some feeling of affection and love for Krishna, and is satisfied with whatever Krishna supplies in the form of his prasadam or prasad, mercy, then such a devotee actually is on a spiritual platform. But if they're attached to the results, then they become entangled by karmic reactions. Okay, so it says, Sritan writes, materially motivated activities will not liberate you, but will purify you to some extent. They are meant to elevate you to the mode of goodness. Spiritual activities, however, are situated in the transcendental mode of goodness and are not done for oneself. Okay. So, thank you very much, Sritan. And then we also got homework from Samarth. He gave 2 homeworks. Okay, we'll go to this. He must have sent it twice, the same thing twice. Okay. Assignment. Read Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, 3rd Chapter, 25th to 30th verses, and write an essay about the difference between materially motivated Vedic spiritual activities and pure devotional service. Some references are Bhagavad Gita 18.5, Bhagavad Gita 18.6, Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4, and look up other references for your own. You can also look up other references. So, Samart writes, Bhagavad Gita 15.15 states, Vedaischa sarver, aham eva Vedya. The real purpose of studying the Vedas is to approach the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. However, many do not realize the real purpose of the Vedas. They use their expertise in Vedas to perform materially motivated sacrifices, which are part of the karma kanda section of the Vedic literature, so they can be elevated to heavenly planets and enjoy better sense gratification. They completely remove devotional service to please Krishna from the picture, and their goal becomes pleasing their own senses. As a result, they keep moving between these three planetary systems and can never come out of the cycle of birth and death. Jai Shishirada Nilamadava Ki Jai. So when he refers to three planetary systems, those are the three planetary systems in the material world. The heavenly planets, the middle planets, where the earth is, and the lower hellish planets. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, 3rd Chapter, 25th verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, as explained here, the Vedic performances are meant for those whose intelligence has been dulled by the flowery language of the Vedas. Which describe fruitive activities intended to elevate one to the higher planets. Instead, one should perform Sankirtan Yajna to go back to Godhead. Well, and the point is that in Kali Yuga, none of the other yajnas can be done correctly. The only yajna that can be performed correctly is Sankirtan Yajna, and that's by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why are the other yajnas like Satyanarayana Puja and like, for example, Sudarshan Chakra Puja and other pujas like that, and yajnas are not going to be successful? It's because you don't have the pure brahmanas who are situated on the transcendental plane to say the mantras, so therefore they will not succeed. When it says they will not succeed, it means that as long as there's a material motive, it's either by the brahmana himself or by the yajman, the person who's asking for the sacrifice, it's going to contaminate the whole purpose. And as we've read in the 7th Canto, 10th chapter, verse number 8, even one material desire is enough to contaminate everything one does, all thoughts, all endeavors, everything. So imagine if a person has many material desires. Okay, so Samart continues. Srila Prabhupada writes, ritualistic ceremonies were meant for persons interested in Vedic rituals for elevation to heavenly planets. Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam. Whereas the Sankirtan chanting of Hare Krishna was meant for pure devotees interested in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, yeah, if you repeat the names of Krishna with affection, Krishna is very pleased. Just like, let's say you have a co-worker, and let's say your name is Bill. So he calls out to you, "Hey, Bill, come over here right away." How does that sound? It doesn't sound very nice. It sounds ominous. It doesn't sound like there's affection. But let's say Bill goes and visits his grandmother, and his grandmother says, "Oh, Bill, pyar, I wo prashad hai, prashad kaya. So, in other words, the grandmother's voice is full of affection, and Bill's co-worker, well, it was maybe condescending, it was maybe rough, it was maybe abusive. So we see that the vibration of the, let's say, the communication is very important. So if we chant the name of Krishna with some affection for the Lord, and he can tell because he's in your heart and he can hear you chanting, then the Lord is very pleased. Just like if someone talks about you in a very positive way and you hear it, you'd be very pleased. And if someone talks about you in a very negative way, you would not be pleased. So Krishna is very attentive to his sincere devotees who address him affectionately. Just like if you have one friend who always asks you to do him a favor, and you have another friend who's always doing whatever you desire of him. So which one would you prefer? Obviously you would prefer the second friend who's always trying to serve you and favorably. So in the same way, now you can understand something about God. He's always attentive to his sincere devotees. And he personally, and this is in Srimad Bhagavatam, he personally protects his devotees. Whereas all other living entities who are not actually devotees of the Lord, they're under the scrutiny of the demigods, who sometimes protect and sometimes punish people, depending on their karma. Whereas Krishna, he always protects his devotee because his devotee does not have any selfish desires for self-pleasure, but the devotee's motive behind all his activities is to please Krishna by following the instructions of bona fide spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus. So now it says, considering all these points, therefore, intelligent men decide to solve all problems by adopting the devotional service of chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart and who is a mine of all auspicious qualities. That's like a gold mine. Such persons are not within my jurisdiction for punishment. This is Yamaraj speaking. Generally, they never commit sinful activities, but even if by mistake or because of bewilderment or illusion, they sometimes commit sinful activities, they are protected from sinful reactions because they always chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This means that devotees who perform devotional service generally never commit mistakes. However, people who perform materialistic sacrifices commit mistakes because they are doing these sacrifices for material benefit and have to suffer the consequences of their actions, both bad and good. Another very important point is, even if the devotee commits sinful activities by mistake, he is considered saintly and is excused by the Lord. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, 30th verse, and in the purport of Srimad-Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 26th verse. Apichet sudara charo bhajante mam ananyabhak. Sadra eva samanta vya samyak vyavasito hi saha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Well, the last line is the real important point to remember. As long as one is properly engaged in devotional service to the Lord protects his devotee. When one deviates, then they're under the control of the demigods, who are in the process, who engage in punishment and reward. With Krishna, there's never any punishment, only reward. With the demigods, there's punishment and reward. Okay. Non-devotees may make a show of religion, but it is not very effective because although they ostentatiously attend a temple or church, they are thinking of something else. Such persons are neglecting their religious duty and are punishable by Yamaraj. But a devotee who commits sinful acts which he may do unwillingly or accidentally because of his former habits is excused. That is the value of the Sankirtan movement. So that's in the purport of the 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 26th verse. And then Samart continues, a devotee who is fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord is protected by the Lord. In Srimad-Bhagavatam 6.3.27, Yamaraj warns his servants, my dear servants. Okay, so that previous thing that I read, that was a purport by Srila Prabhupada. That was not Yamaraj speaking. Now Yamaraj is speaking. My dear servants, despite what you... one second. Despite what you may have done previously to disturb the devotees, henceforth you should stop. So Yamaraj is speaking now to his servants, the Yamadutas. The actions of devotees who have surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord and who constantly chant the holy name of the Lord are praised by the demigods and the residents of Siddhaloka. Those devotees are so respectable and exalted that Lord Vishnu personally protects them with the club in his hand. Therefore, regardless of what you have done this time, henceforth you should not approach such devotees, otherwise you will be killed by the club of Lord Vishnu. This is my warning. Lord Vishnu has a club and a chakra to punish non-devotees. Do not take punishment by attempting to disturb the devotee. Not to speak of you, if even Lord Brahma or I were to punish them, Lord Vishnu would punish us. Therefore, do not disturb the devotees any further. Such is the greatness of devotional service, or such is the greatness of devotional service until, without any material motive, the Lord becomes the personal protector of the devotee. So this is very precious information. Srila Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita 18.6, although all sacrifices are purifying, one should not expect any result by such performances. In other words, all sacrifices which are meant for material advancement in life should be given up, but sacrifices that purify one's existence and elevate one to the spiritual plane should not be stopped. Now this is extremely important for us, because oftentimes when there's difficulties in our life, we start chanting more ardently, let's put it like that. But in the back of our mind, it's to remedy the problem. That is a mistake. Krishna knows better than you or me what the problem is. So you don't have to ask him to solve this problem or that problem. You simply glorify Krishna, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. The original Narayana. He is he has a transcendental body made of Satchitananda Vigraha. He is a transcendental cowherd boy. He loves cows. And he's the creator of both the material, middle, and lower planetary systems. So therefore, you don't have to ask for anything. You simply glorify the Lord, and he'll do it. So because he always takes care of his devotees. Now, let's read a little bit more and finish Samart's homework. Okay, I lost the place. Let's see. Okay. So everything that leads to Krishna consciousness must be encouraged. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, also it is said that any activity which leads to devotional service to the Lord should be accepted. That is the highest criterion of religion. So a devotee that simply engages in devotional service and does not ask for anything from Krishna, because Krishna knows better than you do, or better than I do, what we need. He promises. Taste some. He promises. He says that for my pure devotee, who's always engaged in service, always thinking of me, I provide what he lacks and preserve what he has. So the Lord is promising to provide what you lack. What is it that we lack? We lack Krishna consciousness. So he'll make Krishna consciousness easily available. If you live in the vicinity of Samamish, he'll inspire someone to build a temple right in the Samamish, so you can come every day easily. You don't have to drive to Seattle, you don't have to drive to Portland or Vancouver. He puts a temple right near you, so you can come every day if you want, and it's a safe place. And then so he provides what you lack and preserves what you have. If you are Krishna conscious, then he will do everything to protect you so you continue in Krishna consciousness. That's the real meaning. A lesser meaning is, let's say you don't have enough money to pay the rent, somehow or other he'll supply that money. And let's say you were destined to be robbed and this thing and that thing, he'll protect you so that that doesn't happen, or even if it happens, it's not severe. So, but that's a lesser understanding. The real understanding is he'll make Krishna consciousness always available and easily available to you. And he will protect you so you don't fall down. Okay. Yeah.
You said when there's a problem, people chant more or, to try and get
Relief from the problem.
And you don't need to do that, I suppose. But then scriptures also say that...
What says?
Scriptures generally also say that God gives...
Which scripture are you talking about?
I don't have a specific reference, but generally I've heard
Okay.
that God gives problems to devotees, not necessarily to non-devotees, because that makes them call out to God.
Well, Krishna put Arjuna in a difficult situation. That was so he could speak the Srimad-Bhagavatam and to glorify his devotee. He put Bhisma Pitamaha in a very difficult situation, but that was so that he would be glorified and prove to others that Krishna always protects his devotee, as he promises. So that's different. That's not because Arjuna has some bad karma or Bhisma Pitamaha have some bad karma. They're special devotees of the Lord, and they do not reject Krishna because they're put into difficulty. They realize that the Lord has a plan, and that they patiently wait and see what the plan is. In the meantime, they suffer rather than protest, because they know that the Lord is their servant, is their savior. Therefore, they can tolerate all kinds of situations. Whereas materialists, they can't tolerate anything. Their toleration level is like this, microscopic, right? Because it's so attached to material things. So Harivilas Maharaj, he lost everything, but he didn't give up his faith in Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj, he was in the worst situation possible. He's just 5 years old, and his big, gigantic father is trying to kill him, and his mother also. But he didn't waver in his determination to depend on the mercy of Krishna.
But like Gajendra's story. Right?
Which one?
Gajendra,
yes.
I mean, I guess he did call out to the Lord for help when he was finding trouble, right?
Yes, but he was very attached. You know how many wives he had? He had a whole harem of elephant wives. He had a lot of attachments in the material world. And he tried to struggle for 1,000 years. I think it was 1,000 years, for a very long time. And finally, he completely surrendered to the Lord. Yeah, but there's a difference between Gajendra and Arjuna or Bhisma Pitamaha. They're staunch devotees. Right? And Krishna put him in that position because he had a purpose to do, and he did it through his devotees. So they're not suffering because of karma. One second. Let me just say. Okay. They're not suffering because of karma. And even their suffering is not real suffering because they were always dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. They never doubted. So, like I said, you don't have to specifically ask for this or that, but you continue affectionately glorifying the Lord. And he knows what you need, and he knows the cause of all these problems, and he will do it in his time and in a way that you become Krishna conscious and other people become Krishna conscious. Always asking for Lord, this thing, that thing, everything, every time something goes wrong. But when everything's going all right, you don't ask him. You don't glorify him. So
that's what I'm saying. That's why you get something. Otherwise, you will never remember that. So.
We have to always accept the fact that Krishna is omniscient. He knows everything. He's in your heart. He knows you better than you know you.
Yeah.
Right? So he knows what you need, and he knows what you don't need. Like, for example, let's say you go to Lake Sammamish this afternoon with your fishing rod, and you put a bait on the hook, and you throw it in, and you go, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Please, Radharani, please, Krishna, give me a fish. Do you think he'll give you a fish?
But he might, like Dhruv Maharaj, right, got a kingdom because he actually genuinely...
It's not going to give you a fish because it's not good for you.
Not in that example, but I'm just saying that, if you truly from...
No, but he gave up. Dhruva Maharaj gave up the desire. As soon as he saw Vishnu, he gave it up. He realized, he said, I was looking for pieces of glass, but I found a diamond. Yeah, so he realized that, his petty material desire was useless now that he's actually coming face to face with Krishna. Okay. So these petty material desires, first of all, no one ever dies. It's only the body. The soul is eternal. Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. The soul never dies. So, do we accept that or not accept it? If you don't accept it, then you're in the throes of constant anxiety because the body is very susceptible to dying at any time. Right? Any little thing can go wrong with the body. Look at all the mechanism inside the body. One little swelling is enough to put you in misery. Right? Whenever your tooth gets infected, there's a swelling and you're in misery. If you have, an artery that gets blocked, you're in misery, right? So, therefore, if we think I'm only this body, we're always in anxiety, we're always worried. Right? But if you understand that you're not this body, you're the spirit soul in the body, and it's just a temporary body. Therefore, whatever time you have, you use to try and please Krishna. Because he's the only person that can really help you. Joe Biden is not going to come and free you from death. None of these people are going to be able to do it. Your family members can't stop death, right? They can't stop hurricanes. They can't stop any of these things. They're always happening, and they just sit around and wait till it's over, and then try and fix the damage. Right. So here we have to learn to depend completely on the mercy of the Lord. And at that time, just like if someone, let's say you have a child, right? So when your child is very young, the child completely depends on you. You have a responsibility to maintain the child, you know. It has to eat every day. It has to bathe every day. It has to evacuate every day. It has to sleep every day. You can't say, well, I'm going to take a 2-week vacation. You know, the child can fare for itself. That would be totally irresponsible, and probably something horrible would happen if you did that. So the same way, if someone is Krishna's devotee, Krishna personally protects the devotee. That's what Samarth was quoting the verse, quoting from the Bhagavad Gita, that the Lord personally, it says, such is the greatness of devotional service without any material motive. The Lord becomes the personal protector of the devotee. Everybody else is under the supervision of the demigods, but the devotees are personally protected by the devotee. Therefore he says, Ananya chintayanto mam ye jana paryapasiti te samnitya biyuktanam yogasemam vahamyam. One who is always thinking of me, always engaged in my service, I provide what they lack and preserve what they have. So we have to believe the Lord. That's one of the 3 verses that Ramanujacharya insisted that every one of his devotees, now and in the future, repeat every day. And this next one is Sarvadharman Parityaja Mami Kam Saranam Braja Ham Tvam Sarvapapipyo Moksisyami Masacha. Just give up all kinds of dharmas and just surrender to me, Krishna says, and only to me. If you do this, then I promise you that I will protect you from all sinful reactions. Therefore, you have nothing to fear, nothing to hesitate for, nothing to doubt. So, there's those two verses from Bhagavad Gita. And Ramanujacharya is a Sri Vaishnava, but he insists that every one of his devotees, now in the future, repeat those mantras every day. So that's how important they are. And just like this morning, we were explaining the purport to 7th chapter, 19th verse, Vahanam Janmanamante. And it explains all the things that are rejected by the materialists. And it's a long list of things. And everything that they reject are the fundamental beliefs of devotees. So there's no such thing as being educated in these materialistic schools, because they're going to categorically cancel everything Krishna says, every point. Right. So, therefore, we're under pressure. You have millions and billions of people going in the wrong direction, and you just have a few people going in the right direction. So, the weight of that numbers is such that, it's discouraging sometimes when you look at it, or it's encouraging. How is it encouraging? Well, being born in Kali Yuga is a great thing for devotees, because almost everybody is not Krishna conscious. You can preach your whole life. Whereas if you're born in Satya Yuga, almost everyone is Krishna conscious. So, it's like you're preaching to the choir. So Kali Yuga is actually a great opportunity for devotees. You could be preaching 24 hours a day, every day of your life. But actually, preaching is never successful unless you're following strictly yourself or ourselves. So that's the most important thing. If you want to be a good preacher, you have to follow very strictly the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Then other people say, okay, this guy's sincere. I'm trying to find where the hole is in this psychology, but there's no hole. It's completely dedicated to Krishna. So it's a sincere person. I might not agree with him, but I have to say this is a sincere person. Okay, so Samarth continues, he says. So beginning of religious life should be without any material motive. Pure devotion means anya bilasita sunyam. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11. No material motive. Generally, as it is stated, in the Bhagavad Gita, people go to the temple and the churches of any religious conviction, the synagogue, the church, the mosque, with a material motive. Arto artarti. Generally, they are in need of money or they are unhappy some way or other, and they go to God, Krishna, or according to their religious principle, and pray for material benefit. But that is also accepted as good because they are approaching Krishna or God. So that's the end of Prabhupada's quote. And then Samart continues. Prabhupada is stating that people go to temple for material motive, but real devotional service is without any material motive. The translation of Srimad Bhagavatam 3.29.9 and follows. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. And Samart says, this tells us that worship of deities with a material motive is in a mode of passion. Okay. One need not worry about not performing sacrifices prescribed in Vedas and demigod worship for the material benefits like health, wealth, protection, etc. Just by simply chanting the holy names of the Lord and following the program of Srila Prabhupada under the guidance of bona fide spiritual masters, one can attain the perfection of life. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.25. Quote, especially in this age of Kali, Sankirtan alone is sufficient. If the members of our temples in the different parts of the world simply continue Sankirtana before the deity, especially before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will remain perfect. There is no need of any other performances. In conclusion, one should not perform devotional service or any Vedic sacrifices with any material motive. One should perform devotional service only to please Krishna and obtain the love of the Supreme Lord. That is the perfection of life. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, 22nd chapter, 107th verse says, dormant devotional service to Krishna is within everyone. Simply by associating with devotees, hearing their good instructions, and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the dormant love for Krishna is awakened. In this way, one acquires the seed of devotional service. Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bijan. Your servant, Samart. Haribol. Very good, Samart. Okay. So now, let's go a little forward. So it says, I'm going to very quickly go through these verses that you were supposed to read. And it says, verse 25 to 30. Okay, so verse 25 says, because they are bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yajnavalkya and Jaimini and other compilers of the religious scriptures cannot know the secret, confidential religious system of the 12 Mahajanas. The Mahajanas are Brahma and Narada and Shiva. And then there's there's Prahlada, and there's Bhisma, and there's so many others. Okay. So, and then it says, they cannot understand the transcendental value of performing devotional service or chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Because their minds are attracted to the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas, especially the Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Rigveda, their intelligence has become dull. Thus, they are busy collecting the ingredients for ritualistic ceremonies that yield only temporary benefits, such as elevation to Swargaloka for material happiness. They are not attracted to the Sankirtana movement. Instead, they are interested in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Religion, a mundane religion, material development, sense gratification, and mundane or incomplete liberation. In the purport, Prabhupada says, since one may easily achieve the highest success by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one may ask why there are so many Vedic ritualistic ceremonies and why people are attracted to them. This verse answers that question. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedashta Sarveham Eva Vedya, the real purpose of studying the Vedas is to approach the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Unfortunately, unintelligent people, bewildered by the grandeur of Vedic yajnas, want to see gorgeous sacrifices performed. They want Vedic mantras chanted and huge amounts of money spent for such ceremonies. Sometimes we have to observe the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies to please such unintelligent men. Recently, when we established a large Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavana, we were obliged to have Vedic ceremonies enacted by Brahmanas because the inhabitants of Vrindavana, especially the smarta Brahmanas, would not accept Europeans and Americans as bona fide Brahmanas. Thus we had to engage Brahmanas to perform costly yagyas. In spite of these yagyas, the members of our society performed Sankirtana loudly with mridangas, and I considered the Sankirtana more important than the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Both the ceremonies and the Sankirtana were going on simultaneously. The ceremonies were meant for persons interested in Vedic rituals, for elevation to heavenly planets, Jadi, Krita, Matir, Madhu, Pushpitayam, whereas the Sankirtana was meant for pure devotees interested in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We would simply have performed Sankirtana, but then the inhabitants of Vrindavana would not have taken the installation ceremony seriously. As explained here, the Vedic performances are meant for those whose intelligence has been dulled by the flowery language of the Vedas, which describe fruitive activities instead to elevate one to the higher planets. Especially in the age of Kali, Sankirtana alone is sufficient. If the members of our temples in the different parts of the world simply continue Sankirtana before the deity, especially before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will remain perfect. There is no need of any other performances. Nevertheless, to keep oneself clean in habits and mind, deity worship and other regulative principles are required. Srila Jiva Goswami says that although Sankirtana is sufficient for the perfection of life, the archana or worship of the deity in the temple must continue in order that the devotees may stay clean and pure. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur therefore recommended that one follow both processes simultaneously. We strictly follow this principle, his principle of performing deity worship and Sankirtana along parallel lines. This we should continue. Well, that's an extremely important purport by Srila Prabhupada, and it's full of wisdom and good advice. So Yamaraj begs forgiveness of Lord Krishna for the mistake of his servants. And in the purport, text 30 says, Lord Yamaraja took upon himself the responsibility for the offense committed by his servants. This, in legal terms, this is called the if the servant of an establishment makes a mistake, the establishment takes responsibility for it. Although Yamaraj is above offenses, his servants, practically with his permission, went to arrest Ajamila, which was a great offense. The Nyaya Shastra confirms, Pritya parade swamino dandaha. If a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable because he is responsible for the offense. Taking this seriously, Yamaraj, along with his servants, prayed with folded hands to be excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Well, there's a principle in American law called the agency principle. What does the agency principle say? It says that if an employee of a corporation, it could be a nonprofit or a profit corporation, makes a mistake, then and it's something that's repeated, then the director or the owner or the manager is also responsible, because he may claim ignorance of the mistake that was made, but if the mistake was made over and over again, whether he knew about it or didn't know about it, he's responsible. If it happened one time, if it happens one time, that may be excused. But if it's a regular occurrence, then it's the defective management of the manager, because he did not detect this regular thing happening that may be illegal. So the manager takes some responsibility. The Nyaya Shastra confirms, if a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable because he is responsible for the offense. Taking this seriously, Yamaraj, along with his servants, prayed with folded hands to be excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Well, when Prabhupada was a pharmacist, he had a pharmacy, and in those days, in the 1930s, even in the United States up to a certain point, it was legal to sell opium as a painkiller. But it was highly regulated, and you had to promise that you would not sell opium and things like that to people just for their pleasure, to get high, but you could sell it to people who needed it as a sedative to offset the severe pain. Well, unbeknownst to Prabhupada, he had a worker who, whenever Prabhupada wasn't there, was in charge of selling the products. And this worker sold some opium without telling Prabhupada. And the police found out about it, and they called Prabhupada to court. And in the court, the judge said, do you have anything to say in your defense? And Prabhupada explained how he had a worker working under him, but he may not have instructed him properly, or the worker may have purposely acted irresponsibly. And Prabhupada promised the judge, this will not happen again. I will put everything under lock and key, and I will be the only person with the key to that safe. And the judge agreed, because Prabhupada was an honorable person, even though he was going to be held responsible for the workers or the subservient employees' purposeful mistake. So the judge, could recognize that Prabhupada was an honorable man and that he would keep his word, and he did. So that mistake that was not made again. And Prabhupada did not benefit from the employees' irresponsible behavior. Okay, so now text 31. Sukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is able to uproot even the reactions of the greatest sins. Therefore, the chanting of the Sankirtana movement is the most auspicious activity in the entire universe. Please try to understand this so that others will take it seriously. Well, see, we can see how important this whole story of Ajamila is, because it's basically about how to become Krishna conscious, and how to preach Krishna consciousness, and how to represent Krishna. So your homework for next week is read the next verses, 31 to 35, and explain how Vyasadeva is finishing this chapter, what's happening in this part of the chapter, and how does it tie in with everything else that has been said. Okay, so let me give you an example. So 6.3.33 says, devotees who always lick the honey from the lotus feet of Lord Krishna do not care at all for material activities, which are performed under the three modes of material nature and which bring only misery. Indeed, devotees never give up the lotus feet of Krishna to return to material activities. Others, however, who are addicted to Vedic rituals because they have neglected the service of the Lord's lotus feet and are enchanted by lusty desires, sometimes perform acts of atonement. Nevertheless, being incompletely purified, they return to sinful activities again and again. So, this is a very interesting verse. And in the purport, Prabhupada is going to explain what is the duty of a devotee. A devotee's duty is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. One may sometimes chant with offenses and sometimes without offenses. But if one seriously adopts this process, he will achieve perfection, which cannot be achieved through the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies of atonement. Persons who are attached to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies but do not believe in devotional service, who advise atonement but do not appreciate the chanting of the Lord's holy name, fail to achieve the highest perfection. Devotees, therefore, being completely detached from material enjoyment, never give up Krishna consciousness for Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Those who are attached to Vedic ritualistic ceremonies because of lusty desires are subjected to the tribulations of material existence again and again. Maharaj Parikshit has compared their action to Kanjara Socha, the bathing of an elephant. Kunjara Socha, the bathing of an elephant. The elephant is bathed, and then it goes on land and collects some dust with his trunk and showers it on his body. So he just spent time washing his body, and now he's dirtying it again. Okay, so one cannot achieve such purification merely by observing vows and performing Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. So this verse 33 is explaining the devotee's duty that he must perform. So you can only be a devotee who never stops being a devotee by tasting nectar every day in the form of Krishna Katha and Krishna Japa and Krishna's service in so many different ways, so many varieties. So you get that taste for Krishna consciousness, just like, let's say you have a taste for lemon meringue pie. So that taste stays in your mind, and every time you think of lemon meringue pie, your mouth sort of waters because you're desiring to get that taste again. Well, it's the same thing, or a taste for an ice cream, a particular ice cream, or a taste for some music, or a taste for a car. So once you get that taste, you don't want to let it go. So if you hear Krishna consciousness on a regular basis spoken by devotees and discuss and try and assimilate this knowledge, you get that taste. And therefore, you'll never leave Krishna consciousness. So text 34 says, after hearing from the mouth of their master, Yamaraj, about the extraordinary glories of the Lord and his name, fame, and attributes, the Yamadutas were struck with wonder. Since then, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and dare not look at him again. Well, there's no reason to fear a devotee. But the Yamadutas were fearful of devotees because they didn't realize how powerful a devotee is, and how much the devotee is protected by Krishna. So So then you read these verses and you write what is the particular characteristic of a devotee. And you can do some good research on that too. Let me tell you where to look. In the Ishopanishad, mantra 14. And take a look at that mantra. One second, let me just double check it. Yeah, so mantra 14, Ishopanishad. You can read that. That'll give you some supplementary information about the duty of a devotee. And then also you can read Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, 19th verse, I think 18th or 19th verse, Bahanam Janmanamante Yanavam Mam Prapadyante. So in the purport to that verse, it explains what are the, let's say, strong beliefs of the atheists. But you'll see everything that atheists claim to be the truth is false. And just the opposite is true about the convictions or beliefs of a devotee. So between those, the chapter, mantra 14 of the Ishopanishad and 7th chapter, verse, I guess, 18 or 19, Bahanam Janmanamante, you'll be able to write comprehensively what are the duties of a devotee, what are the basic beliefs that motivate a devotee. And and as far as your vocabulary goes, look up the word ethos, E-T-H-O-S. E-T-H-O-S, because what is the ethos of the devotee? Okay, so you have your homework. If there are any questions, you can ask them now. Haribol. What's that? Okay. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.